Throughout the 9 standard adventure mode maps and the 1 rewards map of the game, there are a total of 163 costumes for you to collect within Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. Each one of those additional costumes has a unique reference to someone from some time in the Zelda franchise. Some of these are very easy to see, however, some of these are very obscure and require a lot of research or just a wide knowledge of the series to be able to point out. However, that's where I come in. In this video, which is divided into 9 parts based on where the costume comes from, I'm going to be examining each one of these and point out what the reference is. If you'd like to jump ahead to a certain costume collection, check in the description where I'll have time codes for each of the 9 sections of this video. Let's get started, everybody! Together, the Hyrule Field map and the Rewards map contain 12 costumes total, with each one having 6. However, in this video, I'm also going to include 3 of the basic costumes that you'll start with, just for the sake of keeping everything together. Let's go take a look and get started. One of the only new costumes included in this version of the game is the Champion's Tunic, which is Link's costume from Breath of the Wild. Looks very familiar and looks very nice. The second new costume is Zelda's Breath of the Wild gear, which also looks very nice, and I also like that it includes the Sheikah Slate right there at her waist. For the last of these basic costumes, we have the Trainee Tunic, which Link does start out wearing in the game. The Zora Tunic here is of course based on the Ocarina of Time Zora Tunic. Likewise, this red tunic is also made to match the Ocarina of Time Goron tunic. Next up we have the Knight of Skyloft tunic, which of course is based around the Skyward Sword version of Link. The Classic tunic, which is built around Link's original Legend of Zelda appearance, especially that hair. The Skyloft Robes costume is of course built around the way that Zelda looked in Skyward Sword, at least until she changed into her white dress. And the Wind Waker robes for Ganondorf are obviously based around how he looked in the Wind Waker. That does it for the 6 Hyrule Field map costumes, so let's go ahead and jump to the Rewards map costumes, and I promise these are a lot more interesting. First up we have the Dark Link costume, which first appeared in The Adventure of Link, which was the second Legend of Zelda game. He's probably more remembered from his appearance in the Water Temple in the Ocarina of Time, but something that I really like about this costume is that there's actually Dark Link versions for every single one of the weapons that he has, including some of the ones that kind of incorporate other characters, such as the Great Fairy, also for Epona, and yeah, there's also one for the Spinner too. These are the boss colors for Link, which, like the other boss costumes, are built around one of the giant bosses in the game. In this case, the color scheme comes directly from Beast Ganon, and I'll be honest, this is one of my favorite costumes for Link. The next boss costume that we have here is for Lana, and if you couldn't tell from the yellows and oranges and reds, this is King Dodongo. Here, looking great with her black hair, black armor, and red clothes, is Princess Zelda. This color scheme is modeled around the giant boss dragon Argarak. Looking perfectly insane here, we have Ganondorf in his boss colors. Now, this one is actually rather contentious, as there are really 2 candidates for what this could be. The first one that people believe is that this is a reference to Goma. However, for me, there's just not enough of the regular colors that Goma has. Although, you could say that the way that Ganondorf's headpiece works here could be his red speckled eye. More likely is that this is actually a reference to the giant Kako. This actually mirrors the Link boss costume very well, because like his, the giant Kako is the second boss character that was allowed to be playable in the DLC where these costumes first came out. Last up for the boss costumes on the Rewards map, we have Sia, who is having the green and reds and the yellows of Manhandla, the big plant guy that you fight many times. I'll go ahead and take off her mask. There's not really any references under her hood, it's all about the color scheme on her body. So that does it for all of the costumes in the Hyrule Field and Rewards map, along with a few extras. Altogether, the Wind Waker / Great Sea map contains 24 costumes, meaning this map has the most costumes of any map in the game. Let's go ahead and check them out. First up, we have the blues and whites of Link here, who is an obvious reference to the Outset Island Link. You can see that the white of his lobster has actually become his scarf here, and I think this one looks really great. Next up, we have one of the hardest to place costumes in the entire game, with Impa in her pink and bluish gear here. After a lot of thought, I've come to the conclusion that this one is definitely a reference to Cyclos, one of the gods from the Wind Waker. From the purple on her chest to the whites and blues and the reds of Sheik's costume here, she's actually a clever reference to Tetra, which is a nice nod to her secret identity. Jumping away from Wind Waker for a bit, the greens and pinks and reds of Lana's costume here is actually a reference to the Deku Princess from Majora's Mask. This is another one of my favorites for Lana. Princess Zelda, with the slightly more striking blonde hair and the deeper pinks and purples here, is a reference to her Toon form, seen in the Wind Waker and Phantom Hourglass. This neon blue and black Ganondorf is actually a nice reference to his Phantom form in the Wind Waker. Darunia's deep brown beard and the markings on his chest is a reference to the big Goron seen in Phantom Hourglass. Ruto's little dress here, that actually leaves her butt exposed, is a reference to her long descendant Laruto, who is one of the dead sages that helps guide you in the Wind Waker. The blues and blacks of Agatha's costume here could be a reference to one of the many Lolita styles, however this one specifically is made to match her Luna parasol. Here, I'll go ahead and equip it, and you can see, yeah, matches it to a T, and it looks great too. This costume, which I wasn't able to get the first time around, has become a much more clear reference to the Floor Master from the Wind Waker. The blue and gold Zant here is actually a nice reference to Godon, Arbiter of the Gods, one of the bosses seen in the Wind Waker. I like his gold helmet a whole lot. The whitish, silvery body, purple legs, and the black face are a reference to the Wind Waker's Great Fairy. This fabulous Girahim is a reference to the Kalidimos plant boss seen in the Wind Waker. It's also probably my favorite costume for Girahim. The fiery red and deep colors along with the whitish face makes this Sia a reference to Jalhala, the ghost fire boss from Wind Waker. The white horns, red body, and beige chest makes this a very nice reference to the Wind Waker's Valoo, who sits atop Dragon Roost Island. The brownish Wizrobe here is a very nice retro reference to the first Wizrobe enemy from the Legend of Zelda, the original Legend of Zelda. This purple and pink costume for Twilight Midna is actually a reference to her Hyrulean counterpart, the Princess Zelda from Twilight Princess. This isn't really one of my favorite ones, but I like the reference quite a lot. The first new costume for Child Link has a nice, tricky little reference. Take a look at the purple clothes and the brown hair, and do you got it? It's the Happy Mask Salesman from Majora's Mask. With the very whitish blue color of his body and the blue pants and backpack, this Tingle costume is a reference to his younger brother, Knuckle. Fitting very well with her blonde hair, Linkle's costume here is a reference to Link's sister Errol from A Wind Waker. The white and purple colors here on Skull Kid makes for a costume reference that is very hard to place. But if you look closely, it's actually not so hard after all. Looking at Skull Kid, what else is white and purple? Well, it's clearly his two fairies, Tattle and Tail. Or maybe it's a Poe, but it's probably Tattle and Tail. This Outset Island shirt is a reference to the Outset Island shirt that Link wears on Outset Island in The Wind Waker. Who would have guessed it? Tetra's green pants and red and white striped shirt make this a reference to one of the members of her pirate crew, Nico. Nico doesn't seem to have blonde hair, but he does have a blue bandana that Tetra is wearing around her neck here. For the last of the costumes, we have King Daphne's with this bright aqua and yellow colors, and a slightly grayed beard. This is all changed because it's a reference to Oshus, the Ocean King from Phantom Hourglass. Even the pattern that's on his coat is a reference to the pattern seen on Oshus' coat. And that'll do it for all of the costumes in the Great Sea Wind Waker map. Altogether, the Master Quest map from Hyrule Warriors contains 18 costumes for the cast. Let's jump right in and check them out. The purple colors for Link here is a nice new color for him to wear, but it's also a reference to the game Four Swords, where we have a green, red, blue, and purple Link. This reddish-greenish Impa here is a reference to one of her many forms, in this case the Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons Impa, which matches these colors almost to a T. Sheik's blackish, purplish body, with one red eye, by the way, is a reference to one of the many villains from Hyrule Warriors, Wizrobe. It could also be Sia, but I'm leaning towards this definitely being Wizrobe. One reason why the previous costume is probably not Sia is because this Lana is definitely Sia, with the purplish, reddish tint on some parts of her clothes that match Sia very well. The second costume for Lana in this map is her Guardian of Time wear, which is a reference from when she was the single Guardian of Time mentioned in the story. Besides the clothes color and the dress, the purple hair here is a dead giveaway that this is a reference to Princess Hilda, the alternate version of Zelda from A Link Between Worlds. The blackish maroonish color scheme here, along with his hair, and those aqua and orange colorings on the back of his cloak, makes this a reference to the Ganondorf scene in The Wind Waker. This is also one of my favorites for the normal colorings for Ganondorf. Well, this one is easy to place. This is obviously Darmani, seen in Majora's Mask, complete with the scar still on his chest. From the purple and the pattern on her fins, this is clearly a reference to Lulu, the voiceless singer from Majora's Mask. Oh, and hey, this one actually covers her butt. While this costume could simply be a reference to the Black Lolita style of dress, there's also a chance that this is referencing one of the enemies from Twilight Princess, the game where Agatha is from, that being the grays and blacks of the Darknut enemy, which are also featured in Hyrule Warriors. Take your pick, I guess. With the darker mask and red highlights, Midna here is clearly referencing one of the Shadow Beast enemies from Twilight Princess. Similar to Midna, with the dark mask and the red marks on his body, Zant here is also referencing those same Shadow Beasts from Twilight Princess. It's a little bit repetitive, but I really can't complain because both of these costumes look awesome. The nearly full silver body of Fi here is a reference to the Fairy Queen seen in Mother and Child Island in The Wind Waker. Don't get her confused with the Great Fairies, which have a slightly altered color scheme and not a full white face. The black and red of Girahim's clothing here, on top of looking amazing, is a reference to his actual form as the Sword of Demise. This is also my favorite of the serious Girahim costumes by far. While at first it's not totally clear what this one is referencing, with one turn you can obviously see that Sia is cosplaying as her favorite hero, Link, complete with his blue scarf from Hyrule Warriors.
And here we have Sia wearing her Guardian of Time outfit, just like Lana, which of course is a reference to how they were once one.
Volga's orangish color scheme, besides looking just awful in my eyes, is actually a really cool reference to Barba, one of the bosses from The Adventure of Link, which was the second Legend of Zelda game. Interesting note, Barba is actually a mistranslation of the dragon's original name, Volvagia, which is a name that should sound very familiar.
Wizro's lighter blue colors here is a reference to the original NES Wizro. It does make sense since we got the alternate orangish-brownish version in the last collection of costumes.
And that does it for all of the Master Quest costumes. Altogether, the Master Wind Waker map contains 16 costumes. Let's jump in and check them out. The bright reds and nearly neon green of Link's color scheme here is a reference to King Daphne's from Wind Waker. I remember liking this one a whole lot when it first came out for Hyrule Warriors Legends, but I guess the effect has kind of worn off. Here with Sheik we have a really difficult to place one. It could be some version of Impa, but on the whole that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. What does make sense from the way that Sheik plays music to affect various elements is that this is referencing both of the weather gods from Wind Waker, with Cyclos being the pinkish red and Zephos being the greenish blues. Anyway, when looking at it this way, you can see how this one is a clever combination of both of their iconic colors. From her blonde hair and the pattern on her blue clothing, this is a reference to Link's sister from the Wind Waker, Aryll. This is also a really good looking one for Lana, in my opinion. With the reds, white, purple midsection, and very blonde hair, Zelda here is referencing her disguised version in Wind Waker, Tetra. Tetra gets a whole lot of references in these costumes. Well, this is a weird-looking one with a rather nice reference. From the pattern on his body and the extremely green beard, Darunia is a reference to the Great Deku Tree seen in Wind Waker. From the purple color scheme on her body, along with the very telling orange and blue lines at the edge of her lower fins, this is a reference to Quill, the Rito postman from the Wind Waker. And yep, there's her butt. Why don't these ever cover her butt? This one was rather difficult to figure out the first time around, but it should be obvious now from the green mask and the beige markings on her skin that this is a reference to Makar. Oh, I guess I have to do the Makar thing again. Hold on. From the purples and blues of her clothes, the white legs, the red in her midsection, and the greenish, some would say slightly blondish hair, this is yet another reference to Tetra. It's not a fairy, it's Tetra. The Queen Fairy does not have green hair. She has silver hair. This is Tetra. It's Tetra! From the purple body, yellowish feet, and the yellow, bluish, greenish square pattern all around the rest of him, this is a nice reference to the Helmarock King from the Wind Waker. The brighter purples here on Sia is at first a little bit confusing as to what it's referencing. However, if you take off her mask and notice that she now has bright blonde hair, along with the skull marking on her scarf there in the back, this is clearly a reference to the skull dress that Hyrule wears in the Wind Waker. This is a very contentious one, but since we already had one character single referencing Cyclos back in the original Wind Waker map, it makes sense then that we have a character with a single reference to Zephos. I'm sure no one will ever agree on exactly what this is referencing, but to me, that's what I finally settled on after all this time. This strange-looking color scheme for Twilight Midna is actually a reference to one of the characters who lives on Outset Island along with Link, Hyrule, and his grandmother, and that is Subel, the eternal pot-carrying lady. You can see her purple hair along with the pink dress that she wears and the bluish markings on it all over Twilight Midna's clothes here. With this being the second additional costume for Tingle, it makes sense for it to be another one of his brothers. In this case, the pink body and the darkish pink bloomers are a reference to another one of his younger brother's ankle. Link here with his red and white striped shirt, green pants, and the blue hat is a reference to his pirate master, well, his true pirate master, Nico from the Wind Waker. Tetra, with the dark pinks and light pinks all over her body here, is referencing her more regal form of Toon Zelda. I really don't like this one. For the last of the costumes in the set, we have King Daphne's taking on the colors of another member of Tetra's pirate crew, in this case being the large Gonzo. This one is okay to me. And that does it for all of the Master Wind Waker map costumes. Altogether, the Twilight Princess map contains 21 costumes. Let's jump in and check out what they are. Starting out simply, we have the Era of Twilight Tunic for Link, which is obviously a reference to the Twilight Princess version of Link. There's not a lot to explore here, but I'm still going to include these just for the sake of comparing them to their original designs. The Postman uniform for Link here is a reference to the Postman scene in Twilight Princess. Once again, not a lot to explore. The new colors we have for Link, however, is a little bit special. On top of giving him one new color to use occasionally, this one is actually making a reference to Pippet, one of the Skyloft Knights seen in Skyward Sword. Up next, we have Impa with her slightly blondish hair, and with dark blue and orange colors on her clothes. This one is another reference to Skyward Sword, with it being a near-perfect color match with the Skyward Sword version of Impa. Continuing with the strange references, we have another version of Sheik here, who's actually referencing to the version of Impa seen in Hyrule Warriors. Wow, this one really folds in on itself. Next up, with Lana's green and bluish colors, we have another insular reference, with this one having a clear connection to the Hyrule Warriors version of Link, complete with his blue scarf. Here in the Era of Twilight robes, we can see a very faithfully adapted version of the Twilight Princess Zelda. And next up we also have a very faithfully adapted version of Ilia, looking a little bit blonder than her original form in my opinion. The new color scheme for Zelda here is actually a pretty unique reference. Seen in only a couple pieces of art, we have what's called the Maiden Zelda from A Link to the Past. While the Era of Twilight armor for Ganondorf does look rather cool, it is actually quite a bit darker than the Twilight Princess version that it comes from. Just take a look at the capes, for example. Here's another Skyward Sword reference in the Twilight Princess pack, with this one linking directly to Demise. If the fiery hair doesn't give it away, I don't know what will. Oh, hey, look, this one is actually a reference to Twilight Princess. Here we have a version of Darbus, the leader of the Goron tribe seen in Twilight Princess. The reddish and pinkish colors of Ruto here, which I actually like a whole lot more than I thought I would, is a reference to Queen Rutella, the mother of Prince Rallis, who plays an important part in Twilight Princess. While the pinkish colors of Agatha's clothes here could be a reference to the Sweet Lolita style, I think this one is more built around matching her level 3 weapon, the Princess Parasol. See, they go together perfectly. Midna always has very tricky and sometimes hard to see costumes. However, this one is not so bad once you take a look. While this one has stumped many people, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense for Midna here to be referencing the Light Spirits, which play an important part in Twilight Princess, including up to the point of resurrecting this princess from death. This ghostly Zant is actually a reference to the Phantom Zant seen in Twilight Princess. Oddly enough, it's this version that seems to be lacking more detail than the original version. I don't know what's up with that, but eh. You know, at first I didn't know what to think about this costume, but now I kinda love it. Anyway, this one is a clear reference to the light spirit scene in Twilight Princess, and it might be my favorite costume for Fi. The capeless Girahim here is actually referencing to how he looks during the second time you battle him in Skyward Sword. I also like how this one kinda connects a little bit to Twilight Princess, in that the black markings on his body look very similar to the black markings seen on Midna's body. That's not a connection, however. This is definitely just a reference to the second time you fight him. While I don't really think the blues here do much for Sia, the reference here is a very clear one, with the blue hair and the blue body pointing directly to Lana. Here we have yet another contentious costume for Volga. In this case, the blacks and reds connect him either to Argorak the Dragon from Twilight Princess and Hyrule Warriors, or to a somewhat spiritual connection that he has to Lu Bu, a very important character in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms story, and the Dynasty Warriors franchise, which this game is a spin-off from. Personally, I kind of lean more towards Lu Bu. That red ponytail is just too perfect of a color match. But ultimately, it's up to your own interpretations. For the final costume in this pack, this one is a clear connection to one of the Poes seen in Twilight Princess, who look a lot more sinister than any other versions in any of the other games. That does it for all of the costumes in the Twilight Princess map.
The Majora's Mask map in Hyrule Warriors has 22 costumes for you to collect. For this map, many of the costumes are simply the older versions of the characters, or the characters wearing a simple mask. I'll still be showing the older versions of the characters for comparison's sake. However, for the masks, I'm going to try to get in a little bit deeper and theorize why that character is wearing that particular mask. Let's jump right in and see what they're all about. Here we have Kokiri Link. This is more the Ocarina of Time 3D version of Link rather than the N64 version. Next up we have Fierce Deity Link, which is just a version of Link wearing the Fierce Deity mask that you never have to worry about a time limit around. Next we have the Era of the Hero of Time outfit for Impa, which is really just the original version of Impa from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Well, Ocarina of Time. Next up we have Impa wearing the Mask of Truth, which makes sense for a lot of reasons. One, in that it has the same mark of the Sheikah tribe that Impa is a part of, and two, in a more symbolic connection in the way that the Mask of Truth is used to guide the player, and that Impa is in many ways a guide for Link and Zelda. Here we have the Era of the Hero of Time outfit for Sheik, which is just Ocarina of Time Sheik. Sheik wearing Kafei's mask actually is a rather good fit, in the way that in the Majora's Mask game, this mask is used to search for Kafei, who is hiding his identity, just like how everybody searches for Zelda, who is actually Sheik hiding her identity. Next up, Lana wearing Skull Kid's clothes here is a nice little reference to Skull Kid before we knew that we would actually be getting him in this game. However, it's still a good fit in that Lana has a lot of connections to Deku and the Kokiri Forest, which is where Skull Kid made his home before Majora's Mask. And wouldn't you know it, of course Lana gets the Deku mask, fitting to her connection with all things Deku, especially as seen in her Deku Spear playstyle. Next up we have Era of the Hero of Time robe Zelda, which of course is just Ocarina of Time Zelda. However, here we have Zelda wearing the bunny hood from Majora's Mask. Why is she wearing the bunny hood? Well, I don't really think there is a reason. I think it's just because she looks damn cute wearing it. Here we have Era of the Hero of Time Ganondorf armor, which goes to show you just how beefed up this version of Ganondorf is when you put him back into his old Ocarina of Time clothing. Ganondorf wearing Odolwa's remains is an interesting choice. They do have some connection in that they're both dark sword masters, but there's really not a lot more other than that. I suppose it just looks really cool on Ganondorf. Darunia is a Goron, so he wears the Goron mask. Do you get it? Ruto is a Zora, so she wears the Zora mask. Do you get it? Agatha, much like the Donjiro mask that she's wearing, loves insects. However, I think the frog chorus master Donjiro loves insects for a completely different reason.
Now, you may be wondering, why is Midna wearing an Ordon shield on her face?
Well, this is a reference to a short but funny scene in Twilight Princess, where, after getting the sword and Ordon shield as Wolf Link, Midna attempts to use them while wearing the shield on her face. Okay, so this is actually a serious connection. Zant, much like the troop leader, puts on a strong face, but is actually a big loser. I'm sure that Zant, like the troop leader, cries every time. Fi wearing the stone mask is a good fit for her very stone-like, unmoving face. Also, does anyone else think this mask looks gigantic on her? Kamaro, the dancing master from Majora's Mask, has his mask passed to a worthy pupil in Girahim. Girahim, like Kamaro, also loves to dance very, very awkwardly. Sia wearing the Majora's Mask is a very, very good fit for her, in the way that they're both embodiments of evil. Volga wearing the Giant's Mask... I guess it's just because Volg's a really big guy. He's big, he's strong. He's a big, strong guy. Finally, we have Wizrow wearing the captain's hat, which fits very well, giving him a skeletal face on top of his ghost-like body. Well, there you have all of the costumes from the Majora's Mask map in the game. Within the Koholint Island map, there are 16 costumes for you to collect. Let's jump in and check them out. First off, we have Link in this white and pink garb, which I really don't like, but is definitely a reference to the Windfish's egg found at the highest point of Koholint Island. Next up, we have Sheik in this gray and brown getup, which is actually a reference to the guide owl that helps you throughout Link's Awakening. Lana with these purple, whites, and dark colors is a reference to the Windfish. I personally think this is a great recoloring for Lana, however, it is topped by one later one coming up soon. Even though Zelda's colors here are rather pale, her inspiration without a doubt comes from Marin, one of the most important denizens of Koholint Island. Ganondorf's greens, blues, and yellows here is a reference to Mamu, the giant frog that teaches Link one of the songs in Link's Awakening. Mamu himself is a cameo character who comes from Super Mario Bros. 2. Agatha's red and blue dress here is a reference to Crazy Tracy, a character who helps you within Link's Awakening. However, it should be noted that her red and blue dress here matches perfectly with her level 4+ weapon, finally completing the set of giving her a costume for each of her weapons. Back when I was looking at these on the 3DS version, Zant's costume was really hard to parse out. However, with the higher resolution of the Switch version, we can easily see the black spots for the eyes and mouth on Zant's mask, which makes this one without a doubt a reference to the Mask Mimic enemy within the game. The Mask Mimic enemies also happen to be one more cameo character, in this case being the Shy Guys from the Super Mario universe. Girahim, with his blue hair and white and blue getup here, is a reference to Prince Richard, who lives in a castle on Koholint Island. Prince Richard is a character with his own unique story in Nintendo history, including a game that was made by the developers of Link's Awakening when they were testing out a lot of their concepts. Sia's costume here, like her counterpart Lana, is a reference to the Windfish. Her hat's whale-tail pattern makes this very evident, and I personally like this costume for Sia a whole lot. Wizrow was another one that was very confusing when it was back on the 3DS, and there were a lot of white and red characters to parse through. However, with Zant decided, it makes it much easier to be 100% sure that Wizrow is a reference to the Genie boss. In Link's Awakening, Link is able to go to the Color Dungeon and receive either the red or blue tunic, and here we see him picking the red tunic, which I guess if you were a good player you probably did. Something that's surprising, however, is that Child Link never got a blue tunic. Spoiler alert, but it never came in any of the later costume sets. Tingle's white and green colors here is a reference to the fourth Tingle brother, David Jr. David Jr. isn't actually a real brother of Tingle, but he's just kind of stuck doing the Tingle stuff. This pink costume for Linkle is a really clever reference. In the animal village of Koholint Island, there is a goat that asks you to deliver a letter to her pen pal, Mr. Right. When you deliver said letter to him, he opens it up to reveal a picture of, well, Princess Peach, signed as Christine. On top of this being another cool way to fit a Mario reference into these costumes, this is a rather good lesson to not always believe what you read. Well, 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 here we are again. It was actually rather surprising how many people remembered my weird banana joke about Skull Kid, and I wasn't really joking, I do think he looks a lot like a banana. However, I've come to accept that he probably isn't referencing the banana in the trading sequence. He's the pineapple. Okay, he might be a Deku Scrub, but come on, he looks more like a pineapple. Look at his hat, that's a pineapple hat. It's a pineapple. Toon Link's weird costume here is actually a really cool reference to Terran, who is Marin's father in Link's Awakening. Terran loves his red and white spotted mushrooms, which look rather familiar, I think. The last costume of this pack goes to Tetra, and it's a reference to Martha, how do you know that name? The mermaid from Link's Awakening. Martha is part of the trading quest as well, where you will receive a certain red-colored item from the fisherman underneath the bridge. What that item is depends on your game's version, however, that item might be referenced here around Tetra's neck as her red bandana. Well, that does it for all 16 of the Koholint Island map costumes. Within the Grand Travels map in Hyrule Warriors, there are a total of 17 costumes for you to collect. Let's jump right in and check them out.
The blue, yellow, and red costume of Link here is a very contentious one indeed. However, upon thought, it is definitely connected to the Spirit Train from Spirit Tracks. This makes a whole lot more sense when compared to the Ganondorf costume, which is an evil mirror of this one. No matter how you look at it, the only thing that has these color schemes in Spirit Tracks is the Spirit Train. Impa's white hair with the pink and purplish guard here is a connection to Angine, a member of the Lokobo tribe who helps Link in Spirit Tracks. Zelda's pale colors here are a reference to a phantom from Phantom Hourglass, or also the armored knight that she takes over as a ghost in Spirit Tracks. The pale blues and red hair of Ganondorf here make this an easy connection to Malladus. It only makes sense for Link to take on the colors of the Spirit Train, whereas Ganondorf takes on the colors of the character who will become the Demon Train. Darunia's bizarre colors here are just so weird that I have to love them, but anyway, they're a reference to the Goron Elder from Spirit Tracks. Just look at those lips. I really will never come to like this color scheme for Ruto, but the reference is nice at least. Taking on a whole new color scheme, we have Golden Chief Cyclos from Phantom Hourglass being this costume's connection. Fi's triple color scheme of yellow, blue, and red is directly connected to Ciela, Leaf, and Neri, who are the spirits of courage, power, and wisdom from Phantom Hourglass. Volga's blue and beige colors here is a reference to the Lokomo tribe trader Burn, who is an antagonist / anti-hero from Spirit Tracks. Wizro's pink top with a green body is a reference to Spirit Tracks' third boss, Phytops. Unlike more recent costumes for Wizro, I actually like this one. Twilight Midna's red hair, along with her purple and blue dress, makes her link to Astrid from Phantom Hourglass. Child Link's brown outfit with the buttons, along with the red hat, makes him a definite ringer for Alfonso from Spirit Tracks, who is a fellow engineer like Link. Having finished out all of the Tingle Brothers, we can finally move on to other bizarre characters in the Tingleverse, with this one being a reference to Pinkle, a character from the game Freshly Picked Tingle's Rosy Rupee Land. By the way, this costume is amazing. Linkle's black skirt with a yellow and white hooded poncho is a direct reference to one of the Anukis from the game, in this case it's Yeko. Skullkid's dark gray and purple outfit here could be referencing his fairy's tattle and tail, however I think it's more likely to be connected to this Poe from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. This one's really easy. Toon Link got his engineer costume, and it looks amazing. Tetra's black hair and blue clothes here are a reference to Jolene, a character from Phantom Hourglass who has a lot of connections to Linebeck. And speaking of Linebeck, we have King Daphne's wearing Linebeck's colors here. Personally, I think it's a little bit too shiny on the shirt, but overall, this is an okay costume. And there you have all 17 of the costumes for the Grand Travels map. Within the Lorule map for Hyrule Warriors, there are a total of 17 costumes for you to collect, split between the two sides of the map. Let's jump right in and see what they're all about. Starting off with her brown body and purplish hair, we have Impa, who's referencing the old lady Impa seen in A Link Between Worlds. Next up with her bright blonde hair and the pink and white clothes, Lana here is referencing the Princess Zelda from A Link Between Worlds. Ganondorf's new purplish costume with his classic red hair is actually a reference to the antagonist from A Link Between Worlds, in this case being Yuga. I'm not really too fond of this one, to be honest. With the pattern on his stomach working for a belt, along with his red beard hair and yellow on his back, this one is a reference to Rosso, one of the sages from the game. This green and orange Ruto is actually a reference to another one of the sages. In this case, it's Queen Orin, the queen of the Zoras from A Link Between Worlds. Agatha's blue clothes with her green hair is another sage reference. In this case, it's Ceres. Midna and her other version are both references to the various fissure portals that travel between Hyrule and Lorule and are found all throughout A Link Between Worlds. The patterns on Midna's arms and body here are more of a reference to the interior of the tunnel while you're traveling between worlds. Wow, so this yellow Zant is really up there for probably the ugliest costume in the game. However, the reference is kind of funny and rather fitting of Zant. From the green on top and the yellow body, he can be easily mistaken for a gorilla. However, with the addition of the red shoes, this makes Zant referencing none other than the bee guy. Yes, the bee guy. He's the one who gives you the bug-catching net in A Link Between Worlds. The black, blue, and red on Fi here is yet another Sage reference, with this one being Irene, the witch from A Link Between Worlds. Girahim's yellowish, bluish colors here is a reference to the Sage Osfala, meaning that we only have one Sage left to cover. Sia's new purplish colors here, along with her purple hair, make this one a clear reference to the leader of Lorule, Princess Hilda. Twilight Midna's costume here references both the outer and interior sections of the fissure portals throughout A Link Between Worlds, and by the way, this is without a doubt my favorite costume in the game. I just love it. Child Link's yellow clothes with his green hat are indeed a reference to the last sage of the game, Gully. Tingle's new purple garb here could be a couple things. One, he could be referencing Ravio in his purple clothes, or more likely in my opinion, this is just the Lorulean equivalent of Tingle. Maybe his name could be Tinkle or something, I don't know. Here we have yet another one that could either be Ravio or just the Lorulean version of herself. In this case, I'm gonna lean more towards being a Ravio reference, being that she has the hood and the purple hair to match. Skull Kid's white head along with the brown body make this one an easy reference to the Masked Elder, who, like Skull Kid, is obsessed with wearing a mask. Finally, we have King Daphne's, who is definitely not a Ravio reference given his black hair. Rather, this is definitely a representation of the unseen King of Lorule from A Link Between Worlds. Well, that does it for all 17 of the Lorule map costumes. With this, I have now discussed every reference for all 166 costumes in the game. I'm likely going to be making a little bit more content about these costumes, such as what my top 10 favorite and top 10 least favorites are, so please let me know which ones you like and don't like down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching and supporting this channel, everybody. Until next time, this has been GamesBrained, and as always, I hope you take care.